Okay, looks like we are recording. Welcome everybody to this month's DevShop marketing briefing. I'm excited because we have someone that I barely know here who has, I think, an incredible story to tell about significantly and dramatically increasing the profitability of her services. So Pia Silva, I met you maybe 2 months ago via Jake Jorgenman. Jake said, you got to meet Pia. She's got a really great story. We talked, and I agree. Pia has a very interesting story about working less and increasing effective hourly rate, I think, to the realm that most people would be like, I mean, excuse my French, but holy shit, you make that much per hour. So I wanted to get you in front of my little tiny audience of people in order to share what you've learned through doing that. And most importantly, I think, give folks the opportunity to ask you questions, because I think there's probably a general template, and then there's probably stuff that's specific to everybody. And that's where the questions are going to come in. So Pia, thank you for doing this. I hope as you have questions, folks who are listening, you'll just jot them down or drop them in the chat window here in Zoom so that we can get as many questions answered by Pia in this 90 minutes as possible. I have a few questions of my own. I have a few questions folks have written in. So if we run out of questions, I'm not letting you off the hook, Pia. We're going to interview you and extract every
all yours.
every last lesson we can out of you. So with that, I am going to turn it over to you. If everybody can just remain on mute while Pia's talking, that'll make the audio quality as awesome as possible. I will also mute myself so I can really listen. So Pia, it's all yours.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for having me, Philip. I love talking to fellow entrepreneurs. I am a huge proponent of people working for themselves and taking, life by the reins and doing their own thing. So I just really welcome the opportunity to talk to you guys. And when we spoke, I said to Philip, do you want me to give a presentation? And he said, I really just want you to tell your story in a more of a casual way. So that's what I'm going to do. So first, I'll give you a quick intro to our business so that you have some perspective, and then I'll tell you how we got here. So in short, I am a partner and brand strategist at Worst of All Design. We build badass brands without the bullshit for 1 to 3 person service businesses, and we build them in 1 to 3 day intensives. That's all we do. We don't do any ongoing work, and we don't have any ongoing clients. For this, at the moment, we charge $15,000 for a 1 day and $20,000 for a 2 day intensive. So that's probably what Philip was referring to as the hourly rate. It's a little more involved than that, but I'll explain that later. But it wasn't always like that. No kidding. We started much like many people in this industry. We started 6 years ago. So my background is that I studied economics in college and have always been very entrepreneurial and freelance minded. I don't know how or why, but I was never going to go get a salary job. It was never even an option. Again, I don't know, it was an inherent thing for me. So that means that I bartended. That means that I freelanced. That means that I was kind of a consultant in different startups, just through people that knew me would bring me on to help them do their projects. So I helped start up a small cafe pizzeria in Brooklyn. I was the vice president of sales and marketing for a Yelp competitor back when Yelp wasn't a thing yet. All of those were just experiences for me to get thrown into a ring and try to figure it out. And I think that's what I was known for before we did this. My husband, then fiance, 6 years ago, was a freelance graphic designer. His background is he's an artist and a painter. And then he went to graphic design school after college when his parents said, maybe you should do something that you'll definitely be able to support yourself with. It turned out to be really great because he actually really loves design. So he was freelancing design. I was doing these different freelance type of jobs. And 6 years ago, we decided, okay, we're going to not work for anyone else anymore. I said, I'm going to build a business around you. I always call him my golden goose. I'm like, you are very talented and I can make a lot of money off of you. Because at the time he was charging, $20 an hour, and he's really an exceptional designer, albeit not a great business person. At least he wasn't at the time. So I said, no more working for anyone else. I'll go find you the clients. And that's how our business began, out of our apartment in Brooklyn. It's not a big place. He and I 24/7 in this apartment working. I started by looking for clients on Craigslist. And that was interesting. That's how I got our first clients, very, very cheap. But we were just excited to be doing this on our own timeline in our own way. A couple months into that, a client that I got on Craigslist invited me to her BNI chapter. BNI is a networking company, if you're familiar with it. So I went to that and had never encountered that concept before. And I said, wow, this is how people get business. So I was an avid networker, especially that first year in business. I joined and I had coffee with everybody I could possibly meet all day, every day. I would go into the city. I would be, changing in and out of my high heels, running around the city to Starbucks and to, insurance salesman offices. Because to me, it was just, I need to meet as many people as possible. So we did okay with that because I was really hustling and we got business. We were selling graphic design services. And then as we grew a little bit, I read the book E-Myth. And the E-Myth told me that I didn't own a business, I owned a job. And without employees, I was basically just a slave to my clients. And so that did not rub me the right way because I was so determined to never have a job that I said, oh my God, we need employees. So that kind of sent us off on a new path where we got our studio. So we have an office. We hired 2 employees and we started to grow. And once you have overhead, as many of you might know, you have to start charging more. So our projects got bigger and bigger pretty quickly. And, even in retrospect, the work I think was deserved, the $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 we were starting to charge for 6, 8, 10-month projects. But when I raised them very quickly, it was much harder to close the clients. And having no background in any of this, I had no idea that it would be so much harder to close those clients. There's just a lot more competition at higher prices, and the sales cycle is much longer, which I didn't know. So what happened was 3 years into our business, we ended up in $40,000 of credit card debt. This was a combination of the fact that we had all these proposals out. We came in second for a lot of projects. And I think that part of that was because they really liked us, but there was somebody else who just had more credibility, more experience. They were more focused, whatever it was. One project in particular that made sense, but it sucked, was we were up to brand this huge restaurant right in Times Square. It was so perfect for us. They wanted this cool Brooklyn brand, and that was so us. And we just couldn't have been better aligned for this project. And we came in second to this woman who had done Nobu and every other restaurant in New York City, and when that happened, we were desperate for money at the time. I said, yeah, of course I would hire her too. I do not fault you for hiring her. That makes complete sense. We would have been a much riskier hire. So it's just one example of all these projects didn't quite line up. So we ended up in debt. We had this $8,000 a month in overhead for the 2 employees, plus our other overhead. And the $40,000 was significant because that was all the credit that we had. And we had also just spent the little bit of savings that we had too. So we were really in a bind. There was nowhere else to go. And there was one particular night when I basically had a little bit of a mental breakdown. I had an anxiety attack and I started to cry and I didn't know what to do. And my husband, he said to me, I think we have to let the employees go. And that was just, it hadn't been an option to me before, because letting the employees go meant failure. It meant that we were imploding. It felt like that just meant we were closing our doors and we had failed miserably at this business. And there's like a statistic that 95% of businesses fail after 3 years. And this was literally to the month 3 years after we had started this business. So it felt really awful. And then he said to me, you know, it doesn't mean that we failed because we're really far from where we were 3 years ago. I mean, we have a lot of happy clients in our repertoire. We've done a lot of successful projects. We do great work. People love us. People want to work with us. Maybe the way that we're doing it is not working, and maybe we need to try something different. And maybe we need to think about how we can take this business forward without the employees, because the employees and the overhead was what was one of the biggest crushing pieces of this. And so once he shifted that perspective, and I say that especially, Philip, because you mentioned about the mindset thing, that was an incredible mindset shift that I had almost in that moment where I said, oh, we could let the employees go and not close our business. And actually, I felt like I just made $8,000, you know, because I was going to owe $8,000 in the coming weeks and I didn't know where it was going to come from. And once he kind of lifted that pressure off of my shoulders, I started to see that there were other possibilities. So what happened over the next couple of months was that we decided to put ourselves through our own process. And that is how we ended up building the business that we have today. So I'll give you, and then people love this. So we were in $40,000 of debt, and in the next 12 months, we ended up doing $500,000 in sales without the employee overhead, without paying for advertising, without networking, without social media. And this is how we did it. So we put ourselves through our own process, and some of the most important things that we ask our clients and that we asked ourselves were the following. So first, we usually ask people, what do you hate about your industry? What do you stand against? What do you think sucks about your industry, or what do you dislike about what you do? And how do you do it better? And when we asked ourselves this question, we said, well, we hate design by committee, because design by committee waters down great work. We hate projects that last months longer than they're supposed to, because clients don't deliver the content they said they would, or they're unresponsive, or they need more and more revisions. We hate things that are revised to death over personal feelings that have nothing to do with the actual project. Anybody in creative projects knows how that goes. We hate just working with like big groups of people. That's not fun. And really, I said, I just hate how much project management there is. And so we realized that we had been building an agency much in the model of all these things that we truly, truly disliked, which was eye-opening in and of itself. The second thing that we ask ourselves is, well, what do you love about what you do? And luckily, we love the work. I mean, I love working with entrepreneurs. I love small businesses. Steve loves concepting brands. He loves design. He's very good at it. And so we said, well, great. We actually love the core of what we do. We just don't love all this other stuff. And then we asked ourselves, and this is a key question that I ask all clients, I encourage you to ask yourself too, is what's the most profitable thing that we do? And so a little side story, about a year before we ended up in this hole, we were raising our prices very, very quickly. And because of all that networking that I had done, I had this wide network of people that were also small business owners, but they couldn't afford the $30,000, $40,000 minimum project price that I was starting to charge. And so a business coach of mine at the time, he said, Pia, you've got all these people who want to work with you. What could you sell them? What could you sell someone for $3,000? So he actually said, $3,000, you come up with what you want to sell them. So I said to Steve, okay, what can we do for $3,000? And we decided, well, for $3,000, we would do like an intensive day, because we're actually both pretty fast workers. Maybe if they came in and they just agreed that they would take whatever we had at the end of the day, and that would be the end of the project, then we could actually do a lot of work for them, because again, we're both pretty quick at what we do, we could actually build quite a bit of stuff in a day if the client agreed to this model. So we designed a little page, an unlinked page, and we called it a brand up, and it was this 1-day intensive for $3,000. And I didn't advertise it. I didn't tell anybody about it. I just kind of had it in my back pocket. And I said, whenever I was speaking to somebody who might not be in that $30,000 range, I would say, oh, okay, well, I also have this other thing and it's $3,000 and maybe that works for you. So we did a couple of projects like that over the year as I continued to go for the big whales. And fast forward back to when we're putting ourselves through this branding process, we said, what's the most profitable thing that we do? And we said, oh my gosh, those brand ups are much more profitable for us. Now, usually, a lot of entrepreneurs don't quite equate a $3,000 project as being more profitable than a $30,000 project. However, for these $30,000 projects, we were spending 6-8 months. The amount of time that we were investing in that was incomparable. It was definitely more than 10 full days of work. So it was much more profitable to do a $3,000 day project, because if we did 10 full days of work at $3,000 a day, that would be $30,000. And a $30,000 project was taking much more of our time. Not to mention, the $30,000 projects were requiring us to do all kinds of things that we didn't really like. So another thing that we had asked ourselves, what do you love to do? We actually really loved these brand ups, these intensive models. They catered to the things that Steve and I both really enjoy doing. They catered to our intensive way of working naturally. They catered to the fact that we could make big changes in short amounts of time. They allowed us to work with clients and completely transform their business and their brand without having to do then the design by committee, watering the work down. And again, they were much more profitable. So we decided, actually, like literally overnight, we're just going to double down on this. We're going to completely reposition our company. We're only going to work with small business owners. It ended up narrowing in the year after, 1 to 3 person service businesses, and we're only going to do brand ups, and we're going to be known for that. And while still in debt, I basically went back to all these proposals that I had out and to my entire network, and I just re-educated them. And I said, hey, I know you know us and we're graphic designers and we do branding, but now I want you to know that we actually do badass branding. It's no bullshit. It's 1 day. It's super intense, but you get all your stuff and that's the end of it. And it was so different and intriguing that I closed 4 clients just on those calls. The clients that I had proposals out for, I said, so this is funny. So I called up all the proposals I had out, and it was the same kind of awkward conversation where, you call to check up on a proposal and the client says, oh, I'm so sorry I haven't gotten back to you. They're kind of embarrassed because they should have responded to your proposal and they didn't. And I said, oh, no, I'm calling to tell you that proposal is no longer valid. We no longer do that. However, I can do the whole project for you, same project, same deliverables, for a small fraction of the price in 2 days. And I closed 4 clients just like that, because these were people that were already really interested in working with us. And I slashed the price, down. One of them specifically, it was a 2-day project. So I said 6,000. So that was down from like 30,000. And he said, well, that's great. I'll do that. So what happened was, that information and that was such a clear idea. It was so specific in how we worked, the price point. It was very transparent. It was very easy for people to talk about. And we ended up just attracting clients like crazy very shortly after. And as every time we got a few clients, I just raised the price. And I didn't just raise the price because I had a lot of demand. Every time we did it, we got a little bit better at it. So we started to increase the value of what we were selling. So a $3,000 brand up when we first started was essentially only our day's work. And now our process, we actually do most of the work ahead of time. So our process has evolved actually into a 2-step process. Step 1 is something called a brand shrink. It's an 1.5-hour interview with me and my partner, we deep dive everything about the business. I want to understand the small picture, and I want us to understand the bigger picture. You know, where have you been? Where are you now? Where are you trying to go? What are the big goals? What does success look like to you? And then I also want to know all about your previous clients, your previous successes, projects, price points, all of that. And based on that brand shrink interview, I deliver a brief, a pretty concise brief, about 2 to 3 pages, outlining exactly what your brand needs to focus on, your messaging. Sometimes I'm helping with pricing, service, productizing services, how you're positioned in the market, how you should speak, whatever makes sense for the specific client. But I give them a brief that outlines that plan. And then on the last page, I say, okay, based on this plan, these are the things that we see that you need. A logo, the design and build of a website, all of your copy. Here are the pages for your website. You need your identity materials. You need the design of your social media. You need, this signage for something, whatever it is. And then I say, we can do that in a 1-day or a 2-day intensive brand up. And then once the client signs off, I take half up front. We do the prep work. And then they pay the other half the morning of the brand up. I take them through this process where we show them work and we get their feedback and we make revisions in real time and we move forward such that we launch the website at 6 p.m. at the end of the day. We hand over all the files with all the work that we've done. We have a whole system, file saving system, so that they have all the raw files, all the print files. I have the clients actually order their business cards during the day. I want to make sure that everything is ordered so that they are off to the races and ready to start selling, that night, that next day. And the reason I do all of that is because I think that over the years, my experience has been that it's really valuable to clients for me to take the project over for them and give them the answers. That's what they're looking for from me. So I never ask people, do you want us to write your copy? I say, we are writing your copy. I know that you need all of these things because I've done this a million times. And that positioning as an expert and really solving the problem for them, because most people don't understand what branding is, or not in such a holistic way. And they certainly don't know, in my experience, a lot of branding companies they'll say, okay, well, we'll do the website, but you need to go find a copywriter, or we'll do the logo. What do you want it to look like? And we have a completely different approach. We want to say, what are you trying to do? And they say, okay, we'll build that whole thing for you. This is what you need. And even though you may think, and I say the copy and over again, because clients not providing copy that they said they would provide was the number one reason those big projects took so long, because the copy was always the holdup, copy and photography. So I just learned to say, it's okay. The whole thing is included. We take the whole project. We take over the whole project, and that solves the ultimate problem, which is you don't necessarily know what this all looks like, but we do. And that, I think, is the key to why we've been able to raise our prices so much, because we have a very tried and true process. And I guess I'm honing in on that a bit because I think that's a huge key to all of this, which is really finding not just your niche, but your way of doing things and your process that you can replicate over and over and over again and get better and better and better at, such that you can continually increase the price and therefore the value of what you're doing. Or rather, you can continually increase the value so that you can continually increase the price, which increases profitability over time. So I think that's a good sum up. Philip, what did I miss?
That's awesome. I have questions.
Yeah.
Other folks in the audience have questions. Here's how we're going to do questions. So I'm going to read out, if anyone's dropped a question in chat, I will get to it and read it out. I think I'll start with audience questions first. So I'll just read out your question, and then feel free, as Pia is responding to that, to if you want to ask a follow-up or get clarification on something, just unmute yourself and jump right in and just get everything you can out of her. This is from Matt. As you were making your change from Craigslist to where you are now, what kind of mindset changes did you go through? Like how you thought about yourself, your clients, your business, et cetera?
Well, I transitioned from Craigslist to networking pretty quickly. And that was a really scary thing to do. I mean, I speak publicly now, and I've worked with a speaking coach for that. But when I first started doing that, I mean, visibly shaking to do my 30-second, and thinking about my 30-second elevator pitch the whole time, like not listening to anyone in the room, just so terrified about my own things. So mindset was, there was no other option. I had to find clients. That was my job, was finding the clients. So I did whatever I had to do, and it was scary and it sucked a lot, but there was no other option. So I don't know. That was my mindset.
Were there things that increased your feeling of confidence in yourself that you remember from that time?
From that time.
Or actually from any time. It's like, can you look back and say, wow, I got a lot more confident when that happened, or when we kind of mastered that, or whatever?
I would say my confidence really kicked in when we finally found our thing. Okay. Like when we really honed in on something, because that was really authentic. Because I think what I omitted to say was the whole time before that, we were copying what we saw. I was networking, and I saw a lot of other people selling the same services, and I was just doing whatever they were doing because I had no reference point. I didn't know what to do. And I said, oh, that looks good. Their proposals are 30 pages long with all these images. Ours need to look like that. And that's what we did for 3 years. And that didn't work because it wasn't real. We didn't understand why we were doing it. It wasn't authentic to us.
When you come into a potential client's world and you are completely different than that, what do you see in their face? How do they react to that?
With either like a huge smile and curiosity and excitement, or just confusion. Okay. And it's one or the other. I mean, I don't tend to interact with that many people that are confused because they don't usually contact me. But people are usually very curious because it doesn't sound real. How can you build a website in a day? I don't understand how you can do that, and then I explain it a little more, and then they're like, oh, that's really interesting.
So do they sometimes move from confusion to here's a check? Or do they usually not become clients if they're confused at first?
No, I've definitely turned people, although not on purpose. I mean, my strategy has always been like, we are who we are. We know what we do. And that's either really attractive to you or it's not. But I actually kind of shy away from even wanting to try to convince someone that we're good at stuff. Like the process really works partially because the people that hire us are so down with it. They're so excited about it. They're bought into the process. They're bought into us. They believe us and they trust our judgment. That's how we get clients to approve an insane amount of creative work over the course of one day and leave excited with it at the end. I mean, there's a lot of trust that builds up in that process before that actually happens. You could never have a client walk into a room one day and do that with them without all the prep work.
For sure. Jim asks, on your website, your product offerings are very streamlined, plus you are very upfront about pricing and costs. Jim says, what's your advice on this approach? I think maybe he means, would you recommend this to other people, or how does this work for you? Yeah.
Yeah. So I really like having my pricing on my site, and I always have, and I change it regularly. I mean, I increase it. Sometimes I increase it pretty regularly, and that's transparent too. The price is the price, whatever's on the site. The reason I like it is because it really lets clients know immediately where we stand. I mean, it really cuts through a lot of the crap. Nobody is calling me and wondering if I'm going to do some cheapo thing. So I like that. I know a lot of people think that that's actually like intellectual property, what your pricing is. Steve and I are both really loose on the intellectual property thing in terms of like being worried about people stealing our stuff. I mean, in my experience, it's like when you're really branded as your own thing, it's really hard for people to steal your stuff. Like I've actually told people, do our brand up process. Like you should, it's a really good process. You'll do it your own way. There's no way you could do it the way we do it. So there's no fear there.
Yeah. You're sort of a category of one. Let me ask a few follow-up questions. So for people who are trying to do the math and figure out how much money you make is, and I kind of probably made this error at the start where I was like, you take this price and divide it by 2 days of work and you're like, wow, that's a really nice day rate. There's other work that goes into delivering for a client, right?
Yeah.
There's that pre-work you mentioned. So what's the whole process from end to end?
Yeah. So the process is there's the hour-and-a-half interview, the brand shrink. And by the way, even when people are ready to hire us for the brand up, I say, slow your roll. You do the brand shrink first. You pay us for the brand shrink, you get the brand shrink, and then we move forward. And that's actually, by the way, I didn't do it on purpose, but it's a great sales tactic too, because it's like, even though you may want to pay me $20,000, like, let's feel each other out here a little bit and, make sure it works. I didn't do that on purpose, but I think I would now. So so we do that, the hour and a half. It takes me a couple of hours to write a really thoughtful strategy brief, although some are easier than others, just based on whatever it is. I've done so many of them. And then the prep work is probably it's a couple of days all in between Steve and myself. Again, it varies a little bit depending on what the client is and needs. And then there's the day of work, or the 2 days of work. So the 2 days tend to be a little bit more prep work because there's a lot more stuff. But I mean, generally, I kind of average it out as $15,000 for 3 days of our work and 20 for 4 days of our work. And we only do, like this coming month, we're going to do like one every week, but generally we try not to do more than 2 a month. We definitely don't do more than 1 a week. And this is all like lifestyle stuff, Steve and I, like 30 grand a month, that is more than enough for us. And I'm not trying to do this. They're really intense. So, I just wrote a book. We spend those 2 other weeks. I write for Forbes. Like, I got all kinds of stuff I do for our business. So the client work, we're not just like making $15,000 every day of the month working 20 days a month doing that. So that's how it breaks down.
Do you let clients choose whether to do the 1 or 2 day engagement, or do you say you need this? This is the one you should get?
Sometimes I just tell them there's only one option. Usually, if they need a 2 day, like if it's all this stuff, I'll say, okay, so you need all this stuff. That's a 2 day, and then I'll give them the 1 day option, and I'll say we can take out this extra stuff. You can do all the foundational stuff and do a 1 day. So generally. Yeah, but it really does depend. Like if they can't do it in a 1 day, I won't offer it.
Okay. I've had panic attacks from work before. How is your stress level now compared to when you had 2 employees and you were $40,000 in debt?
Oh my God, it's completely
night and day difference.
It's night and day. Oh, well, so it's night and day, but I did experience the fact that when we went from debt to making a lot of money, that the stress didn't change. And I learned then that it wasn't an external thing, it was an internal thing. And I subsequently, Steve and I both subsequently have done a tremendous amount of personal work to work on that. Because when you realize that the number in the bank can be drastically different and you feel exactly the same way inside, you're like, oh, nothing will change this unless I change it. So my stress level is completely different now, but that's because of all the internal work I did after.
Annie asks an awesome question. How do you deal with clients' perception? And I think this is quite common, that value is based on how hard you sweat and how long you sweat. Do you face that with your clients?
Not at all. Not at all. And
why do you think that is?
I think that we attract clients who don't see it that way, who value expertise, who understand they're paying for value. If they weren't, they probably don't even call me.
Okay. So you've managed to like erect a force field that keeps out these clients
force
who
field. That's a great way to
want to see you sweating. But
I mean, you see our website, like we're very aggressive in our messaging and it's very push pull, you either, and I think probably based on the amount that I've now been marketing, and I started marketing heavily on online last year. So this is well after all of this was established. And there were other reasons that I did that for other business ideas that I have. But because of that, the traffic to our website has increased tremendously. And if we didn't have that force field, I think I'd be fielding all kinds of crazy calls that I don't want. And I really like that it's basically a virtual assistant saying only the qualified come through, you know.
Was that did that make you nervous to do that, to be so strong about who's wrong for you, or to be so polarizing?
So, I mean, that's an inherent part of our strategy for everybody. And we aren't necessarily, we're definitely, I mean, we are the most of any brand that we've done. You know, when I push clients to really embrace what's different about them, and that's a big part of what, you know, I help people do. And some of that is mindset too, really getting them to hop on board and say, look, it's going to be powerful when people are magnetically attracted to you, and you want that. And you have to be okay with some people not liking you. We do it in our brand more and more, even because we want to show how powerful it is. You know, I want to walk that walk. I don't want to write. You will not see on our website anywhere where I say like, we have innovative, creative solutions to make you look different. And you know, it's like, I would never say that, you know, I'll just say like, worst of all design, badass brands, you know, and either you're like, yeah, I'm a badass too. Cause our clients, they all call me. They're like, I'm a badass. Like I saw your thing and it spoke to me, you know, I love that. Like, that's what I want from my clients, cause they're going to get the best value out of what we do because their personality is like that.
Got it. Okay. Matt asks, as you started raising your price, did your client base change or evolve? I think you may have partially answered that already.
Yeah, they got better.
Okay.
They got better and better. They got more, they became a little more, we don't work with startups. We say now we don't work with startups. And part of that is because our strategy is based on previous experience. You know, I can go all in on a strategy based on what a client has told me about their previous clients. But I don't want to make anything up for somebody. So I don't want to craft a brand. It has to be based on something real and tangible. And the higher the prices have gotten, the more badass the people coming to us are at what they do, you know? And so that and usually they've been marketing in some way. So I know that our work is going to elevate them very quickly because they're already out there. In the beginning, we were working with people who weren't doing any marketing. So they wouldn't necessarily see that huge bump right away because they had to like figure out marketing. So it has changed actually quite a bit. And I really like that.
What does a 3-person service business look like? Who's a good fit for you? I mean, without being specific about clients or be specific about clients, however you want to answer that.
Yeah. Actually, most of our clients are 1 or 2.
Okay.
I just cap it at the 3.
Okay. What do they look like?
Yeah. So like one of them we just did recently, she was a marketing. She does marketing for fitness companies.
Mm-hmm.
She's an ex-marketing person who did like really big brand stuff. Mm-hmm. Another person is a C-suite executive coach, speaking coach, high level, wants to look, you know, we've done a lot of lawyers, a lot of financial advisors, architects, general contractors, other coaches. Yeah, people selling their services, people where sometimes it depends. And we actually just opened this thought leadership brand package. That's the highest one. Sometimes it's about them and sometimes it's not. And that depends a lot on the strategy stuff, but it's often about their expertise, whether or not the brand is their face or not.
Got it. Okay. And he asks if it's still you and your husband, your partner.
Yep.
Okay.
Just me and Steve.
Nice. So Eric asks, how do you handle development? Because it sounds like you're doing some web development in that short of a time frame. You said you're fast. Is there something else going on behind the scenes?
We design and build everything on Squarespace.
Okay.
So there's no development.
Okay. So you're not touching code.
No.
And Steve is like cranking away in Photoshop or whatever, making.
Yeah. Photoshop. Okay. And exactly. I mean, you know, our philosophy, and again, like we're selling service businesses. So these are marketing brochures. These are not, you know, we don't do any functionality.
Right.
We don't
no
do e-commerce
web apps or.
Yeah. I would just stay away from that completely. It doesn't work with our model. But also great design, you know, Steve's always looking for ways to like break the template a little bit, you know, like using design to make it, I mean, because people are so wary about this template thing. I'm like, get over it. Like, you don't need to customize a brochure website. It just needs to look awesome and have a great message, you know, and that's been my experience anyway. You don't have to put the menu in some crazy weird place. Like, that's not what's going to move the needle. And that's my focus. It's always about, is that going to get you sales? Is that going to build your business? Because if it's not, it's really unnecessary. And that's why we've been able to do Squarespace. And we've converted a lot of people because it's so easy to manage. And that's another reason I do it, because it's really easy to, we do a tutorial at the end of the day and I record it and that's it. And they know how to update their sites. So I love that.
So when you called those clients you had proposals on the table with, it was a phone call, right? It wasn't email, wasn't anything else. It was a phone call.
It was a phone call.
Okay. How did you explain this to them? I mean, you kind of gave the capsule summary version. Can you kind of walk through that phone call? Because I just think that's a wonderful way to take something that was going to be money down the toilet, sort of, and rescue it and turn it into a sale that matched your new model. So how'd you pull that off?
Yeah, I remember one very specifically, Evolution Realty. They had been sniffing around us for months, and they were a 3-person company in Long Island. And I had made them this long, beautiful proposal, and I think it was $30,000 because it was going to be over 6 months, you know, the whole deal. And so when I called him up, it was, you know, I mean, and he's the one I think of because he was like, oh, Pia, we're like good friends now because of all of this, but he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, because he was so embarrassed, you know. And I said, you know, you really need a logo and the design and build of a website. We can actually do that in two days in this new model. And at the time I was much greener with this. So I was much more upfront about the fact that, you know, essentially you're coming in to make decisions with us. You know, you have to agree that you're going to make decisions, because there's not going to be a ton of time for us to just like play with the hue of the blue. You know, you're going to have to trust that we picked a good blue, you know, and we can tweak it a little bit. And so I spent a lot of time on those calls kind of explaining that. But I said, on the flip side, you're going to get all this stuff that we quoted you $30,000 for $6,000, and you're going to get it in 2 days. So this will actually be done months before that other project was going to be done. And it's going to be for a fraction of the price. I mean, he was just so sold because they really liked us and they wanted to work with us. So they were like, well, that sounds like a no-brainer. I said, great, let's do that.
Did anybody ask, so why did you quote $30,000 the first time around?
I don't remember that. I think I would have just said, well, that, you know, we were doing that in a much bigger kind of project. The trade-off is you are basically taking what we do. So if you want to save $25,000 to agree to not nitpick when you're not a designer anyway, then you can. I mean, that's essentially where the money comes from. It's like, that was even when we designed it the first time around, it was like, if these people could just go with what we made, we could make them such amazing stuff. Like, why are they making this so long and expensive? Because that's how I felt. I was like, well, we have to factor in, you know, their sister coming in and having an opinion 3 months down the line. We have to factor all of this stuff in when we price it. If only they could just take it. Like, I would be happy to charge them less, you know? So that's where this all came from.
And most people here have their video camera muted, but I know that like 80% of people are nodding their head because even if you're a software developer or you do something quite different, you've had that experience working with the clients where you know that you're making the right call, but they're questioning it. So it sounds like you had some of that confidence even when you were kind of doing those, like rescuing those proposals. Well, because you were willing to come in and say, we're the experts here.
Yeah.
You can trust that, and it's going to cost you a lot less.
Yeah. Well, before any of this, when we were just doing the big projects, we had over time developed a process of showing our work before we, like primers, like our priming section of our logo presentations got bigger and bigger in those big projects because we learned that the more we explained and told the story, and that's where the brand shrink came from too. Oh, if we really get a full picture of what they're saying, and then we show them, you said this, it looks like this. we did the safety brand. It was, building management stuff. We were like, you want to be like a strong, like a team. This is what military looks like. We took it from here, so that when they finally saw the logo, it was like, it all came together, and then they just understood why that meant. And I think that, years before, we used to just show work, and it's like, what do you think? And there was no context, and there was no authority. We were saying, we've thought about this a lot. There's a reason. Everything here, there's a reason, and we know what it is. And that gives people, I think that that's what clients want. They want you to tell them, I know that you hired me to tell you that this is what it should look like. Right. And I think that when you don't explain that stuff, they feel like their job is to kind of question it.
Yeah, it creates anxiety. And they're like, wait, we don't know if we're dealing with an expert here, so we have to
make the wrong decision.
Right. We have to switch into micromanagement mode. I want to highlight what you said, because I've never heard anybody say it quite that way. And I think it's brilliant that you sort of bake an education phase into the project, so that before the client's exposed to the work you did for them, they have at least sounds like a fundamental understanding of how to understand the decisions you made.
Absolutely. And we still do primers, even at, like, that's the first thing we do is our day, like we're doing one tomorrow. The first thing we'll do is we'll sit down and we'll say, I'll explain the day. I'll say, let's get on the same page. I'll recap what the purpose of the project is. I'll recap what the brand is all about. And then I'll explain that we're going to show a mood board, and then we'll show a mood board and we'll explain what's on it. And then we'll show something, so, and sometimes we'll even show stuff like, we've worked with companies where they want to look, like big corporate companies, and we'll show them what big corporate companies look like first. We'll pull like Target's logo onto it and say, do you see how this is very simple? Because big brands are not just impressive on their own. So we need to make sure that they have a frame of reference, because if you just saw like a, like a circle, a red circle, you're like, well, that's kind of boring, like you see that that's Target's logo, and that's a brand, and you want to look like that. Okay. So now when we show you a really like simple but clean logo, you'll understand why it's there. And we have had so much success with that. I mean, and the other thing is I prime people like this. I'm giving you all my secrets here, guys. This is the reason people say yes. Is I say, okay, when we get to the logo part, I say, so we've done, we did all the work and we looked at all kinds of stuff. Everything we show you, we have given a stamp of approval on. You can pick any of these logos, and they are worst of all approved. We are showing you the top 3 logos, and they are on a scale of the things that we're talking about. So we're usually splitting 2 things, like it might be like creative or professional. So we'll say these 3 are on a scale of, this is the most creative, this is the most professional, this is the one in the middle. And we say that because we want them to make an informed decision, as opposed to, I like that one more. It's like, it doesn't matter what you like more. It matters that it's doing what it's supposed to do. And if you rely on a client to give you their personal opinion, it's going to be clouded. It's like, I want all decisions to be made based on business strategy.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Okay. Moving on. Great question from Annie. Do you guarantee that you'll finish a certain deliverable at the end of the 1 or 2 days? Is there a caveat for situations where the client doesn't like something right off the bat, or can they make revisions, et cetera?
Yeah. So, I mean, I have a schedule that I tell them we have to basically stick to. And I tell them, absolutely, I guarantee that we will finish all the deliverables, assuming you stay on my schedule, and so there's leeway there, but at certain times in the day, if they're starting to be like, okay, I say, we absolutely can, and we can actually do this all day. But just so you know, if we continue to do this for much longer, I won't be able to guarantee those deliverables anymore. But you'd be surprised. The second I say that, they're like, oh, that one looks great. Keep moving. and then on the flip side, I actually, I tell clients, I tell them this in the morning, I say, if you make decisions really quickly, which a lot of clients, they're just looking at it, they're like, I love it. And then that's it. And we just keep moving. I say, if we make decisions really quickly and we go through the day, we'll actually throw some other stuff on the end. So like, I remember one client, like we have this like marketing postcard we send clients before they come, and it's just like cool illustration thing. And they really loved it, and they brought it with them. And I said, if we finish everything, Steve will make you one of those. And so, and they were like, Yes, yes, yes. So Steve he made him like a shirt. He made him like, because again, like, once you got all the assets, he's like throwing it on stuff. He's like, yeah, let's throw it on a hat, and he's just mocking all this stuff up for them. And they love it, because they're getting so much stuff out of it. But we love it. We want to give you more, and we want you to go with what we made because it's good.
That's incredible. Okay. James says, I really like what you said about how you use your own process on yourself. He's making an assumption here, but he says, it sounds like there was a lot of continuity amongst your last work, or your previous client work was cohesive in some way. Do you have any suggestions in how to get to your inner, I love doing this and it provides value to my clients? If your clients are less focused, I guess let's break that down. So were all your previous clients pretty similar, or were there a lot of differences between them?
No. My previous clients were all over the place. I mean, we did food products, we did bigger corporate things, smaller companies. When you look at, what I do with clients and we did with ourselves is like, you're looking at your favorite clients and your favorite projects and the ones that you did the best at. So I'm looking for the intersection of all of those things. Which client did I work with? And because usually the ones that you liked the most were also the ones that you produced really good work for, where the client valued what you did, like where it was successful in the end. I mean, those things tend to go together. So I usually look for, and where you enjoyed it the most. So I usually look for those when I'm interviewing clients and basically looking to focus there. That's the scariest part for people. It's like, oh, but I could do all this other stuff. I'm fearful of leaving money on the table. What if somebody comes? I mean, saying no to bad clients is one of my biggest tenets. It has a whole chapter in my book, how to say no to everyone who's outside of your perfect ideal client. So did that answer the question? I'm not sure.
I think so. I may not have done a great job of conveying it. James, do you have any follow-up there?
No, I think that was a great follow-up. I was just curious if it was all over the place, if you had any strategies, if that was kind of the case. And I think you answered it pretty well, focusing like where the successes and also where the clients enjoyed working with you and got a lot of value out of the work. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, this is a little sarcastic. It's funny how those things go together. Like, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody who was like, I hated that client, but the project was a huge success.
Right.
Those rarely happen together. James has another question. It looks like you went to about 5x your original offering price. Was that a gradual increase, or did you just go right there?
So I raised it $1,000 a month that first year.
Mm-hmm.
And then it stayed there for a while. And then I went from 10 to 15 a couple months ago on a whim, and nothing changed. And, I don't mean to be cavalier about it, but it was kind of like, at this point, it was like, what's the difference? I'm making brands that are going to make people so much more money. It is really an arbitrary number. And between $10,000 to $15,000 for a day, that's fewer clients that I need to work with to make the same amount of money. And yeah.
Okay. Annie asked, can you talk a little more about the logistics of building this fast? Like I think to a lot of people, it sounds remarkably fast that you could produce finished work that you feel great about, that clients are psyched about, like inside of something measured in a day or two. So, anything you've learned about doing that?
Yeah. So, well, obviously we've honed the process of taking clients through it over many, many clients. And, my strategy also, this kind of relates to the pricing thing. My strategy that whole time was to over deliver on every single project and then use that as a reason that I could then charge more. Because every time we did a little bit more than we were expected to do, it was like that project was worth a little bit more. And then I knew that I could turn around and sell the next person that bigger version of it at a higher price. But in terms of doing it quickly, obviously as we raised the price, we did more and more prep work. And also to kind of make it easier on us. There was a while there where I was writing copy with the client sitting in front of me. Mm-hmm. Now I write all the copy ahead of time, I write like a draft of all the copy ahead of time. Yeah. But I've also gotten much better at it, and Steve has too. And I'll also say, Steve used to spend about 60 hours on a logo, minimum. I mean, that was like, he's like, it doesn't even get good till hour 50, and that was a very creative mindset. I meet a lot of creatives that are like that. And what we were realizing is that, especially in this market, in the service market, I mean, it's different when you're doing, let's say, a clothing brand, and this logo is going to be on every t-shirt and all of that. But in the service industry, it's so much heavier on brand alignment with your messaging and the design and the copy being great and all of that. And, Steve, spends a couple of hours on it. He makes great stuff in a couple of hours. I mean, it doesn't need to be like the FedEx logo where there's a, like sometimes he does that. And the one he's showing tomorrow kind of has that, and it's cool, but it's not necessary. And it doesn't make sense to spend 60 additional hours and charge for it to do that when that's not really going to push the needle forward. Yeah.
Yeah. That's extra gold plating that doesn't really do anything.
That they don't even really appreciate.
Yeah. It sounds like there's a couple things coming together here. One is emphasizing the right things. It's like product design, like where all the pieces have to work together. It really seems like there's that level of thinking and thought and refinement that's gone into this service.
Yeah. I will say that I'm all about increasing my own abilities to provide value. I wrote the book primarily to learn how to write a book and self-publish a book because my clients are the kind of people who want to write and self-publish books. So even if I'm not going to, I may add it on as a service, but even if I wasn't going to, just the fact that I've gone through that process is that I can really advise them on that. And actually, I was just texting with the client yesterday. He's like, should I pay someone there's a book in the box company. Should I pay someone $25,000 to write a book for me? And I immediately wrote him back, maybe, as long as you're going to spend that much and more on the marketing, because the marketing is the most important part. And I don't know if I would have really known that had I not done that process. So for me, it's just like I am spending all my free time trying to increase my value and my skills because I can translate that back to the client.
Let's talk about trust building. James asks, does the trust building cycle have to do with the brand shrink, or are there other steps that happen maybe in your marketing or previous or referrals, or, how do people get to trust you so much is the core question there.
Yeah, well, it's definitely evolved over time because I have written a lot of content at this point. So at the beginning, I've had a blog for 4 years, and I think that the blog was partially there. People often contact me after they've read at least a few articles that I've written. So that's trust building. That's a big trust builder. Yeah. I think that there is a lot of trust in having a proven process. That it's not like, well, what do you want? I kind of say like, and the conversations that I have with them, I'm really just sizing them up. I'm asking them a bunch of questions. I'm trying to understand where they are in business, what they're trying to do, if they're the right fit for us, and what they really need, and and if they really have a problem too. Because I don't want to work with people, like sometimes we get people who money isn't really a thing to them. Like it's a hobby. I don't want to work with people where money is a hobby. I want to work with people who are trying to profit because that's how we're going to make the decisions. If you don't really care about making money, then when I tell you that this is the best thing for your business, you might not care because that's not your focus. So I'm looking for all of these things. And I think qualifying clients like that is a trust builder too, because what they don't feel is that I'm trying to sell them. I'm actually trying not to sell them. I'm like, are you the right client? Because I need the right clients in the room. So I think that's a big trust builder. And then the brand shrink is a huge part of it. Because once we do that and they get the strategy, then they really understand where we're coming from. Yeah.
Yep. I make people sleep on it before they give me money. I think that's a similar sort of trust builder.
Exactly.
Yeah. You could pay me today, but nope, you're going to wait till tomorrow. Okay. So Juliet, hi Juliet, good to see you here. She says she's an agency owner for 15 years. A couple years ago, honed in on a niche that's been good for her. Now she's working on trying to productize and grow. She's looking at working with a coach to help. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I love coaches. I'm always working with someone or another. What do you mean suggestions about the coaching?
Yeah, I don't know, Juliet, if you want to.
Read my book, Juliet.
That could be good.
I was just looking up your book page there. I guess I'm kind of, like I said, I've worked with Philip and really honed in on a niche, and I'm trying to kind of productize a little bit more, and just kind of help me. I need some guidance on kind of growing the business, productizing, kind of getting to the next level. So I've been thinking about working with a coach on that, and I just thought, it sounded like you had mentioned coaching, and I just thought, you might have some thoughts on who I could turn to kind of be an external kind of guide for that.
Yeah, well, I might be able to help you. Maybe you can send me an email and I'll be a little more specific about that.
Okay. What is your email? I guess it's on your website.
Yeah. My email is my phone number, my email is everywhere. I am not hard to find.
A good business development person is not hard to find.
I have clients who are very wary about putting their phone number up. I mean, I get a couple of calls from India, but it's not a big deal. I want people to be able to call me and find me easily.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, my pleasure.
Thanks for the question, Juliet. Elise, I'm curious if we got your question answered, which was more about like how the heck do you build a website in a day? I think you really touched on that with the details about Squarespace. But if you've got any follow-up questions, just drop them in chat. Good to see you here, Elise.
Also, Steve's been doing it a lot. I'm just, Steve's built so many websites on Squarespace at this point. Like, he knows it really well.
Right. That's one of the benefits of picking something and sticking with it for long enough to get like beyond just competent, right? Did you kind of like, looking at him from the outside, did you see a point where you're like, wow, you just like leveled up really, significantly there? Or was it just a more gradual, imperceptible improvement?
Well, he and we meet after every brand up and talk about what we could do better, even if it's just minor things, but we are always looking. And, it was like at one point when we decided, what are we trying to squeeze all of this into the one day for? Like, we can do more prep work ahead of time and it'll just make our life so much easier. So we decided to do that. It made sense. So, those are just things. So it's good to constantly take a step back and look, because you can get really into a rhythm and just think, oh, that's the way it has to be. But we're always trying to figure out, wait a second, can we systematize that more? Can we make that process tighter? So.
This is probably pretty personal to how you guys work, but how do you document your process and make those kind of improvements? Did I just ask a funny question accidentally?
No, it's just funny because we've made so many process documents, and I think Steve looks at his, but I never look at mine.
So it's all up here, right?
It's all up here. I have all these lists and I keep meaning to like check them off, but I've just done this so many times. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not the...
Yeah, that works.
But I laugh because I feel like I should be.
Kay asks, if you ever had a client come back unhappy, do you provide guarantees? Do you ever have to redo work, et cetera?
I have never had a client come back unhappy. I have never had to redo work.
Okay. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because there's so much listening in the beginning.
Okay.
I think that's the key.
Okay.
It is all based on everything they're saying. The brand shrink originally was just active listening. It became more and more strategy, but it used to just be, I want to make sure I heard you right.
just gathering information and being sure you're right about it.
Yeah, well, because we can, we all have filters and stuff.
Yeah.
So, and there's a document there that says it, so we all agree on that.
Got it. Okay. I think this is related. I'm going to ask a question, and then Annie asks, do you refer clients to other designers or developments to deal with their ongoing needs after your process? Also, if they're a bad fit, like how do you turn people down and say, this is not, you don't need to spend $15,000 on this?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I turn clients down who they just need a website, or they know what the website needs to be. I tell them, you don't need to pay us to do that.
Yeah.
You can get that for a lot cheaper. I am not excellent at referring people forward for marketing stuff. only because I have a very hard time referring to people I have not personally worked with and had an amazing experience with. So I've worked with a lot of people. I've had amazing experiences with a few of them, and I refer the shit out of those people. And sometimes I'm like, I'm sorry, I just don't have anyone specific. I just rather not. And then for anyone who's like products or smaller or whatever, I also don't have great people, but I do send them out when I can. I'm always looking for good people to refer to. I refer to clients sometimes. I mean, if I have a client, I know my clients so well. So if if somebody needs someone that one of my clients, provides that service, then they're usually somebody I'll send to. Because after working with someone, you really get to know. I mean, you can tell if they're good at what they do or not. So
sure. Alejandro asks, what's your main strategy to attract clients? I think this gets into, you said you weren't really doing any kind of online marketing like further back than a year ago. So
yeah. I wouldn't call it to attract clients, but I think the main way I got clients was, being super specific. That's why I teach it. That's why I'm so gung-ho about it, because just the specificity and the owning of the thing and being really easy to talk about. That's a big part of it. The reason I see it work with clients that I work with so well is because people might be great at what they do and they're surrounded by people who know, like, and trust them, and they're not easy to refer. So the second you make them really easy to refer, all of a sudden people they refer to you because you made it easy. So that was a huge piece of it. That's not really a ongoing marketing strategy, but I found that to be the most powerful thing. And then the second thing is writing. It's not that my writing was widely seen, but it was, again, like a way for, and I did have a newsletter. I have a newsletter, but I only had about 1,000 people on it for years. But even so, those people, they became clients. I would get people who would say, I've been reading your newsletter for 2 years and now I'm ready to brand, and you are the person I'm calling, so you forget how that stuff can really build over time. So it is an exponential growth. And then I speak, and I started speaking a few years ago, and I don't do it that much, but that's a great way to get clients too.
Your newsletter's email?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, now it's my Forbes contributorship articles, and I just send them out in the email. Okay.
Does that any tips on like creating writing that's not boring and actually makes people want to hire you?
Yeah. I definitely did not know how to write when I started my blog 4 years ago. And I actually went through and turned off like the whole first year of blog articles a couple weeks ago. Because I was like embarrassed that they're still up there. They were so bad. So I definitely put a lot of work into, becoming a better writer. But I think the point is to just make sure you've got a point of view and try to use story. People love when I use a story to explain something. Stories are so powerful. Don't just lecture. A lot of people blog and they just say like, you should do this because you should do it. It's like,
it's really weird. It feels, if you're used to writing that style and then you start just something as simple like opening an email or a blog post with a story, it feels like, wait, why am I doing this? Why am I wasting people's time? And it's the opposite. You're actually earning their attention, I find. And it's sort of shifting the mode of their mind out of this like logical, fact-based thinking into something that can be more receptive to new information, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I have someone who edits my articles, grammar and stuff. And actually the article I'm supposed to post tomorrow, it doesn't have a story. And she was like, your stories are great, Pia. You really got to stick a story in there somewhere. I just have to do that after this, figure that out.
So you're in New York. Do you do everything local or do you work with people remotely?
No, I would say 60% of our clients are remote. Okay. But we've never met them. We do it over Zoom.
Okay. That was a question from Mike. So you do it over Zoom. People don't faint from being in front of the video camera that long, like it works okay. Do you have breaks?
Oh, they're not on it the whole day. It's just more that they are available that whole time. And then we're kind of checking in and out.
Got it. Okay.
It's slightly different, obviously, when they're in the office. They get a little bit more like coaching from me. because they're there the whole day. I'm kind of entertaining them. So they get a little bit more of that, but they often get a little bit less work because I am coaching them. So so it tends to be that the people who are actually remote end up getting more stuff because I have time to like produce more stuff for them.
Got it.
So I think the trade-off is fair.
Got it. Okay. Jim says, how do you attract people to sign up for your newsletter? Does that basically work the same way as like how people would find your blog or your writing? Or do they find you through something like Forbes and then kind of follow you back to your site?
Yeah, I mean, so just quickly, what happened was, so this whole thing started, the whole change started 3 years ago from now. So March of 2014.
Okay.
So we just we made all that money. We transitioned and made all that money for a year. And that was awesome. We were working a lot though. We were doing a lot of these. And then it was like, okay, great. Well, we could just do this forever, but that's not our style. So we took off 6 months and we built an online course. And then I spent all of last year trying to figure out how to sell it. So I spent a couple months learning Facebook ads. I put up a webinar to sell it. I was doing lots of Facebook ads last fall, pretty successfully, but it's really difficult and it was very challenging. And it requires you to actually monitor it. So then I turned it off but that built my list tremendously. So the Facebook ads to the webinar, that was great. And now my book. So I have a book. I have Facebook ads for the opt-in for the book. I had opt-ins on my website, like download your free PDF. I don't find those to be working much anymore. Like a live training online is the new PDF download. So
got it. Yeah. Okay. We're going to go into a lightning round of questions here. So I think William's here, but he sent in a couple questions beforehand. He says, I've seen people make good money working for corporations, doing app development. How would I position myself to gain trust from a corporation? I mean, you're essentially working for some very small corporations, very small business-minded people, right? Do you think there's anything different with a larger corporation in the trust building?
To get hired by them. So is that true?
Yeah.
No, actually, I think that, getting high, I mean, I've actually spoken to quite a few corporate groups about personal branding as a way of advancing your career. Like these days, to me, even if you will never own your own business, you should see yourself as your own business. And I actually had another client who was in talent strategies for innovation companies. And I learned a lot from working with them because she was essentially saying, it's like, there are no more just straight salary jobs. It's people are looking for in what does she call them? Intrapreneurs, like internalpreneurs, like people who are experts and they get brought, and that's what you want to be too. I mean, if you're going to get hired on as a salary, you want to be brought in because you are like the badass in whatever that thing is, because that's how you get paid well and that's how you get autonomy. So I would say you still brand yourself.
Yeah. Okay. William also asked, I used to think I had to be an agency to land big projects because like from the big company perspective, he's a freelancer and that looks risky, right? So do you see that as a problem? Has that been a problem for you where people are like, you guys are small, why would we hire you?
Well, I don't work with big companies.
Okay.
So I don't know if I can really speak to that. I get contacted by big companies, but I tell them I don't work with them. I tell them if there's middle management, I won't work with them. So I can't really speak to that, but I also would say, why would you want to work with those companies?
Yeah, I guess that's what I would add is the traditional advice is if you want to charge more, find bigger clients because they will essentially overpay relative to smaller clients for whatever reason. Number one being they just have more money to work with, right? You have found a way to increase profitability without doing that. That's one of the reasons why I wanted you here to deliver that message. So was that something you had to kind of struggle your way through of like a mindset around how am I going to raise prices or you know what I'm getting at?
I think it has to do with selling value, like if you're able to make somebody $200,000 a year or more, then you can charge them a lot more. And if, there are people out there like that, you only want those people. I think a lot of people who are scared about pricing, again, I've been there, so I'm not I get it. And I still have my own limiting beliefs about pricing. I mean, everybody, you can't possibly not have them. But I think that they are, they're basing pricing on what you think is in the market. And I'm all about basing pricing on what you know your value is and you want. So I've had clients who are making lots of money, and I've had clients who and pay us, and it's like more of a drop in the bucket. And I've had clients who they're putting this on a credit card, and it doesn't matter to me. I'm bringing a certain value, and this is how I value my time, and that's how I, and that's where the ability to raise pricing also comes from. It's like, that's what I need. We got booked for 2 months, and then I raised the prices to 50% because I was like, well, at this point, and that's how much I need for it to make sense for me to do it. So I like coming from that strategy because it's a very like confident place to come from, because it's not like, well, how much do you have?
Right. Yeah, because that makes you feel like a used car salesman when you're like, so why don't you tell me what you budgeted for this before I tell you the price?
Yeah, which I don't appreciate when people do to me, so I don't want to do to other people too.
Yeah. Okay. Here's the lightning round. Where did the company name come from?
So when people ask me, I say, well, we build badass brands, and that's the most badass name you can have, right?
Worst of all design?
Worst of all design. It's a badass name. Who calls their company that? But then I say, well, basically what I was saying before, we are different, and we think it's important to stand out and not necessarily try to attract everyone. We don't like generic things. And being worst of all design is our way of being that without saying it, and without kind of dryly saying what everybody else is saying, which is what we're against. But the origins are that my husband's last name is Wasterval, and it's a college nickname for a stoner artist at Boulder, Colorado. Worst of all.
Hey, worst of all. Get over here. Got it. Cool. Okay. How do you define branding? To someone who's like, if a 5-year-old said, "What's branding, Pia?" How would you answer?
I would say it's in the mind of the consumer. It's how people think about you.
Okay. Awesome. How do you calculate profitability, or are there metrics that you use to measure your business that you're trying to improve?
Yeah, well, I really teach that, you find what your niche is, you find what your thing is, and then you are always looking to do 2 things. You're looking to increase the value of it so you can increase the price, and then also decrease the time spent by improving your processes. So those are the 2 mechanisms. So how can we increase value and price, and then decrease time spent, and really just so you can spend all of your time doing the most high value stuff. I don't need to rewrite the prep, the see you tomorrow, here are the directions to our office. Like, I don't need to rewrite that email every time and just cut and paste, so that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. You said, look at what you love. That's part of the sort of self-diagnosis. Has that changed for you guys over time? Like, here's the sort of pessimistic way of asking that question. Are you bored with what you do, or do you see yourself getting bored, like doing the same process over and over again?
No, I mean, we are always evolving with it. I mean, like I said, we just put up this thought leader package about a few months ago because I worked with a photographer and we branded and worked with a photographer, and he's amazing. And he felt like a real asset that I had found. And he's great, and it's really high quality and all this stuff. So, and as I build my personal brand, which is a very new thing for me, I am now evolving into having all of this experience in personal branding. So we're going to turn around and start doing thought leadership packages where we actually art direct. Like, we've done this. We did this for a couple of clients, but we actually prepare it. We're on set. We art direct the whole thing. And then we have all these amazing photos, and we help them using that in their marketing too. So that's like a whole leap in the kind of deliverables that we're providing to people. And again, it's all like, I'm doing it for myself, and then I'm turning around and doing it for my clients. So it's always evolving.
And it sounds like it really is a true evolution because it's based on what came before. It's based on the same framework that you have for working with clients in a, a time compressed sort of fast results fashion, but you're just applying that to it, sort of a new challenge. It sounds like to me, is that right?
Yeah. I mean, the framework is always the same. Mm-hmm. It's more just like it's evolving in its value and who it's for and all of that. Mm-hmm. And the beauty of walking the walk or doing it for yourself, and this is why I encourage it so much for everybody, is I get to basically spend a lot of my time and money building our value in business because I'm simultaneously building skills that I can go back and sell to people. So, again, I wrote this book because I wanted to learn how to write a book, but now I have a book, so it was dual purpose.
Yeah. I would, if I was writing something about that, I would say you made really smart choices about personal passion projects that could then be turned into things that you can sell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of our highest values is having time to work on our own projects. And years ago, we said our biggest goal was to become our own clients. That's what we wanted. And it looks different than we thought it would, but that's kind of what we are in many ways.
Would you mind talking about that a bit more? I've been in both areas where I've been squeezed with client work so hard that there's just no time to work on the business. So what was that like for you? What's the first thing you worked on when you had just, some time where you weren't just grinding out work for clients?
Well, when we took the 6 months off to make the course, that was us being our own client.
Got it.
But when we first realized that's what we wanted, it was because we were in contact with this agency that they had opened a spirits brand. Uh-huh. They were a branding company and they opened a spirits brand and they branded it. And we saw that. We were like, that is so cool. That's what we want to do. Open companies where it's our brand, but we own it. And so that's what I mean by it doesn't quite look the way that I thought it would, because I pictured it as being this completely separate company. But actually, if we make enough money where we can take time off to build a course that then makes us money, I can take time off to write a book that then, elevates our positioning, whatever it is, that's the same kind of thing. So dual purpose.
Yeah. Do you have a long-term vision for your company? Or do you kind of work in shorter iterations?
Yeah. I mean, I have an infinity goal. I basically want to be the Marcus Lemonis of small service businesses. And I hope some of you guys will, if not join my newsletter, then go check in on my Forbes article tomorrow, because I'm writing this article that's a little bit, try not to be too heady about it. It's a little bit about my philosophy on why the solopreneur economy is so amazing and how I just want to empower lots of people to be very, very profitable in their own thing, because I see it as being very fulfilling and personally fulfilling, and being an economy of people who are super fulfilled by what they do and they increase their skills and their value, and then they're paying each other, and it's building value in a way that is not building stuff. I'm not a big stuff person, so not building trash. And I just honestly, I'll go off on a tangent here, but the big ideas about why that's so amazing for our economy. As a former economist, I think that's really important.
Oh, I think it's important to have a vision that is that big, that you're a little afraid to tell it to somebody else.
Yeah. Well, Steve said I should write a manifesto, even if it's just for me. So,
yeah. He
said it'd be a good exercise.
I want to give you a few minutes here at the end. I have just, I think, 2 more questions from Annie. But I want to give you a few minutes to kind of tell people where they can find out more about you and sign up for your newsletter and whatever else you want people to do as a next step to learn more about this. Sure. But before we get there, Annie was asking about billing. Do you always bill half up front, half at the end? That's the first question.
Yeah, you have to pay for the brand shrink to schedule it. Yeah. That's $1,500. You have to pay half to upfront for the brand up to schedule the date and hold the date, and then you have to pay the other half before we start.
Okay.
So. Okay.
Have you ever had to walk out because somebody didn't have the money there, or?
No.
Okay.
We take credit cards.
Okay. So
make it real easy. And we don't charge a credit card fee either. I try to make it really easy for people to pay.
Do you ever have clients who ask for exceptions to those payment terms? Okay. Did that change when you started charging more, or has it always been that way?
I think it's always been that way when I've had it be that way.
Okay.
You know, that's just how it is. I think there's a certain level of, again, like confidence in delivering it that people, and I only say that because I notice it when I talk to somebody who's kind of like, that's how it is. I would never ask them, you know, oh, do you think I could pay? You know, it would be uncomfortable to do that. So
yeah,
I think that sets it up.
Yeah. If you have any emotional intelligence at all, you know, when someone's really means it when they say something.
Right.
Okay. So clearly that would disqualify a client if they were like asking about price or.
Well, yeah. I mean, even if people are hesitant to pay, I mean, that's why I make them book the brand shrink. Anybody who doesn't pay pretty quickly usually doesn't end up doing it, you know, and I push them pretty, you know, within a couple of days. I say, I have to give this spot to somebody else. For the brand shrinks. And that's when I find out that they're like still on the fence about it. And it's like, okay, then this is not happening.
Do you ever do pro bono work or willingly reduce your price because there's a client you just would love to help and they literally can't afford it?
No, because I have a very low cost boot camp that people can take and go through our whole process. Okay. I do have a mentee. I wouldn't really call that, I mean, I guess that is pro bono work, but that's like that's my charity work sounds really like belittling. That's not what it is.
Giving back.
Yeah, like she is somebody who wants to do really big things in a world where helping like underprivileged like students get access to education and stuff, which is such a huge thing for me and I love. So I'm mentoring her to do that. And to me, that's the best impact I can make, much more than money. Like this is the highest value thing I have. So that's like my, you know. Yeah. Give back.
Okay. And then you said you also have a sort of a DIY version that is a smaller cost that people can buy that and self-implement.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that the course you built?
Yeah, that's the boot camp. Okay. Yeah. I've had over 100 people go through it. It's pretty super. It's very entertaining because we spent 6 months making it entertaining and useful. So. Okay.
That's awesome. Yeah. And then let's see, there was one other question I think from Annie here. Yeah, this is a good one. Points of contact at the client. Do you force them to have one point of contact? That's a common advice from some designers because as soon as you start getting that committee in place, they start acting like a committee. So do you work with just one person at the client or how do you do that part?
Well, again, our target market is generally solopreneurs or two-person businesses. So
right. So by definition,
they're all on the email. But I do
like if somebody wants to bring their partner in, or like their romantic partner, or something like that.
Yeah. Then I say whoever is making decisions in the brand up has to be on the brand shrink call. Must. And then in the contract, I have a place where I say decision makers, and they have to list the decision makers. So I'm basically forcing them to say there are no wives or husbands who are going to show up in the final hour with their opinion.
Got it. Great. Okay. Well, Pia, I just want to say thank you so much. I know you've got what sounds like a pretty intense day tomorrow.
Yes.
So I don't want to keep you any overtime. Can you please just tell people who I can just tell from the feeling in the room that this was awesome and this was so right on point for what a lot of people needed to hear. Can you tell them how to learn more? Just anything you want, promote your stuff or just what's a good next step?
Sure. Well, I really put my heart and soul into this book to like literally share exactly how we did this. A lot of the stuff I talked about in detail. It's full of stories and case studies of how it's implemented in our business and in client businesses. So badassyourbrand.com. You can go there and download the first chapter and read it, and you can buy it on Amazon. It's called Badass Your Brand, obviously. And so you can do that. And I think if you do that, you will end up getting my weekly Forbes articles. Okay. But you can also just search Forbes and Pia Silva and see those articles, and you can, click on the link at the bottom and sign up for that. I'd be curious to see what you guys thought of this article I'm not done with, but I'm going to put out tomorrow now that we were talking about it. But those would be the best ways if you're interested in reading more.
That's great. Well, I know a lot of people are going to be interested. And just again, thank you. Good luck wrapping up your article.
Thank you so much.
And
Appreciate it.
yeah, talk to you later. I'm just, what happens next is I just hang up and the call's over. So again, thanks, Pia.
Okay. Thank you so much, Philip. Appreciate it.
And thanks for
everyone.
everybody who dropped in.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.